Every time she says sir. It's not fair. And by the way, how come everybody's virtual but me?
No, actually, that's why we have a third chair. There's somebody that's supposed to be here with us, but I'm not so sure if he can make it.
I
So,
was in the same Lagos as the person who's about to go virtual.
oh wow.
So we will harass him.
Okay, thank you. Someone's actually in New York. Are we going? Okay.
So do it afraid because I made me go to New York. I didn't get this offer. It's just not fair.
No, it's good.
Okay.
I think you're actually. Okay, I don't want to say the most important person here.
No.
But based on the discussion, what we're asking you is very important
Okay, that's
concerning Nigeria. So
We're
that's
all
why,
Nigerians.
that's why you need to be physically here as well.
No problem. I'm happy to be.
Even the so okay, yay! So we can see Tosin. Hi, Tosin. Sorry for that we're starting late. Good evening, Mr. Jayola. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, and thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. I really apologize that we're starting late. Thank you so much for joining. I'm just going to do a brief introduction of what the panel is about so everyone can understand why we're speaking about what we're speaking about. Okay, so the Lord would like us to focus on technology to enable the rise of the Nigerian economy. Therefore, we have three speakers. We have the essay to the president, as we said. We have the CEO of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, Mr. Laoye Jayola, and Tosin Faniro, an entrepreneur. We actually were hoping to get the CEO of the Nigerian Export Promotion Council. So we're hoping he can make it, but and so the whole point. So let me give you the introduction. Revenue diversification is a matter of national urgency. I don't think I need to explain why we need to diversify from oil. We have seen in the 2016 recession and even in the pandemic that we can no longer rely on oil as our major source of revenue. Ideally, Nigeria needs to apply the three-sector economic model to move from a developing economy that still focuses on the extraction of raw materials, which is known as the primary sector, to the secondary sector, which focuses on manufacturing and processing, and then to the tertiary sector, which is the services. However, as a matter of national agency, whilst it would be ideal to focus on that three-sector model, like I said, we also need to leapfrog to a developing economy literally overnight using technology. From 1950 to 1970, Israel was able to leapfrog from 25% to 60% in terms of growth of Israel's per capita income relative to the United States. They had a 13% year-on-year growth from 1950 to 1955 and a 10% growth annually in the 1960s. The pandemic has given us a massive opportunity in Nigeria to also leapfrog, and we cannot let this opportunity slide. Technology should no longer be seen as a function of ICT. It should not just be seen as a sector, but the common denominator of all sectors. We can use technology to transform all the other sectors such as agriculture, education, healthcare. This would help drive our revenue diversification initiatives and create the revenue stream we urgently need. Nigeria is well positioned for this. I do believe that the revenue diversification is at the top of the agenda of this government. There are various discussions about this at different levels. However, this conference is different. We're not going to talk about what we need to do, but how we need to do it. And this is why technology is our focus for this panel discussion on the rise of the Nigerian economy. We're going to start with Mr. Gubadia, since he's physically at the venue today. He is, again, the Senior Special Advisor to the President on Digital Transformation and the lead on the Startup Bill, a project strategic to the growth of the Nigeria's tech system and the digital economy. He actively supports startups in business strategy, operations, optimization, and technology. And I think he's also an entrepreneur as well. So thank you so much, sir, for coming. Okay, so I'm going to ask a few questions. But again, I've kind of given a background on why technology, but I also want to give some statistics so you can understand how big this thing is. So forgive me for reading. Typically when I do panels and when I speak, like my welcome, I like to just speak. But I haven't really slept. Like I said, this conference has been 3 weeks. And my brain is not is working in Jesus' name. So I just need to I can't think right now. I just need to go through it. So permit me to read. So, Africa's internet economy, according to a Google IFC report, has the potential to contribute 180 billion or 185 billion dollars to Africa's GDP by 2025. Yeah, which is expected to be 36 billion for Nigeria alone. It's reported that Africa's internet economy has the potential to contribute $712 billion to Africa's economy by 2050. Yeah, Africa's young urbanized population is driving economic growth. Positive trends, kneel down, put up your hands. Positive trends suggesting a higher adoption of digital services in Africa in the future are: in 2020, 68 cities, each home to over 1 million inhabitants, and is projected to increase to 85 by 2025. Nigeria is amongst the countries to see the proportion of urban residents increase to over 80% of the population by 2050. Africa's demographic boom rules consumption. The continent is demographically young. 60% of our population will be under 24 by 2025. And Africa will be home to 1 in 3 youths, aged 13, 15 to 35 globally by 2050. Do the maths, because Nigeria is like the biggest country in terms of population in Africa. The internet economy, particularly in sectors such as e-commerce, e-logistics, entertainment, edtech, fintech, health tech, have been resilient even in the pandemic due to the use of digital services. These sectors are leading the way in Africa's digital transformation. So my questions are actually very interesting. I make suggestions, then I ask you what you think about it, because I'm bringing solutions to the table. Okay. So, you say I should call you sir. Okay. Oswald. As a matter of national urgency, Nigeria needs technological innovation, which is the ultimate source of productivity and growth. Deloitte at the World Economic Forum on Africa said innovation is critical for economic development. The stability of Africa depends on teaching our young people to create jobs. Innovation involves how we can use technology to solve the plethora of problems. So I'm just breaking it down for those that may not understand. Innovation is not a big word. It's just how we can use technology to solve the problems that we have, even in your community. We can achieve this by applying Harvard Business School Professor Michael Porter's cluster theory. Yeah? And this is why Israel is so innovative and entrepreneurial, because of the cluster theory. If I say cluster theory, just think of Silicon Valley, yes, in the US, or think of Hollywood, yeah. And it's also something that Dubai tried to create, but they failed. Now, with Israel, when I talked about how they were able to leapfrog, they were able to do that because they used a system called the kibbutz system. Now, which was basically people coming together, personal face-to-face relationships. And as a result, at less than 2% of Israel's population, the kibbutz at one time produced 12% of the nation's exports. The kibbutz produced world-class companies like Netafim, which is a maker of drip irrigation systems, and they raised hundreds of millions of dollars. According to one of the development ministers in Venezuela, he said, and I quote, "All countries have problems and constraints, but what is striking about Israel is their penchant for taking problems like the lack of water and turning them into assets. In this case, by becoming leaders in the fields of desert agriculture, drip irrigation, and desalination. If we apply this in Nigeria, this will have ripple effects on other sectors. Innovation will solve our security challenges. It would attract global tech giants, not just to come and set up service shops, but to actually invest in innovation. We have done well with the likes of the unicorns like Flutterwave. Now imagine if we apply the cluster theory, and imagine how many Flutterwaves we can have. So is this an item on the top of agenda of the government? If no, how come? And if yes, please can you share with us areas that the government is looking at and what stage we are in making this a reality, and how even we can also support that as an entrepreneurs?
Okay, so when you say cluster zones, well, really they're economic zones, right? So I think that may exist for certain products already, certain resources already.
Okay.
It's cutting out. Um, I would say in the startup bill, for instance, one of the things that we've made a part of the bill is creating an economic zone for technology, right? I think what happens in these cluster zones is that you end up having all the resources to help develop products, different parts of it. One thing we already have this in the sense if you think of what Yaba is, right? Yaba is a budding Silicon Valley. It needs the right regulations to help enable them grow, right? Beyond the natural organic growth they've already experienced to date. If you look at a lot of areas like that, they're usually around schools, which is what Yaba is. You have Yaba Tech, also next to University of Lagos as well. So you have the creativity side and so it's a good place that's naturally becoming this cluster zone you described. So the idea would be to create more of them, right? The idea would be to create more of them in all of our states, right? And from the conversation I've had recently, a number of state governments are doing exactly that. Like in those states, for instance, which I'm quite familiar with, is we have Decagon, creating a whole campus for developing developers, to create more developers and create coding camps and the such. I had a conversation with a guy in Ekiti who runs technology there, and he's also doing the same thing. So that idea, it exists, but what is missing is the rules that allow that to become something, right? Right, because Yaba would have naturally become, Yaba is Lagos is one of the biggest, well, not one of, it is the biggest technology economy in Africa right now. And Yaba is a big part of that, right? So naturally, Yaba would have grown more if the right regulation, the right rules were in place. So that's what we're working on.
Fantastic, thank you. And I think we could also look at even in Lagos, I think the Lekki area is actually best suited if we can find further out, so we can even build universities there, like focus on technology.
In the Lekki Free Trade Zone, I've had a conversation with somebody who wants to create a developer camp there. So people are thinking, but in my experience in government so far, very young experience by the way, I would say we don't suffer from a lack of ideas. Ideas is not the problem. There are lots of ideas. My first couple of months there were just reading what was there before. It's already there. Where we suffer is execution, right? So so some of these things we desire, especially when you sit in the private sector, you may need to step into government to help execute them. So that's sort of the gap we have. So I've had conversations with people who are looking to do something all the way out in Lagos Free Trade Zone, to create developers out there. But a number of things are popping up all over the country. And I think although this conversation is about technology, I think Nigeria always had that sort of cluster approach to doing business, right? Computer Village, Aba Market, these are all clusters, right? The leather, there's a zone in Aba that they just do leather. I've never been, but I've heard stories about that. The area in Kanu where they did the tannery and those are all cluster zones, right? So we've always done it. What we lack is the enabling laws to allow these things to scale.
Exactly. So it's time to scale. And you heard him. So some of you need to do it afraid and go into government to help out. Okay. So my other question is, increased connectivity has presented an opportunity for businesses and communities to leapfrog with new technologies, paving the way for economic development. Mobile devices are the most common means of internet access, with 60% of the population in Africa accessing their internet via mobile. So who doesn't have a mobile phone here? However, affordability is a major barrier to mobile internet access. Entry-level and second-hand devices, according to the Google report, have prices ranging from $35 to $40, which is equivalent to almost 80% of monthly wages. Furthermore, Asian brands account for 70% of the African mobile device market. What can we do to encourage local manufacturing so that smartphones can become more affordable and available, and also we'll be able to tap from the export opportunities that will come from the increase in the number of internet users in Africa, which is expected to grow by 11% and even with the after trade agreement that has been signed. So how can we foster local manufacturing of smartphones?
So that's not exactly a tech question. That's an economics question, right? A lot of our industries suffer, and I will stop very shortly and let the investment banker on the panel speak to this.
To see.
A lot of our economies suffer. A lot of our industries suffer because it's somewhat more attractive to import, right, than it is to produce. And that continues to become issues in a lot of different industries where the cost of producing the item cannot compete with the cost of importing. And the way economics work, it's always going to go to the lowest. So the obvious answer there is to once again create an enabling environment to help industries thrive, right? So they can increase production locally, and we can enjoy on the value chain of most of our raw materials, right? So if you look at the different raw materials, you see that we have the raw material, but then we jump to the other end of the raw material where we're consuming it, right? So we have oil coming out of our ground. We don't really refine, but we're using petrol, right? We have all the materials to make cloth and stuff, but we don't. We are sewing. So we jump from owning the material to consuming. We miss the entire value chain in the middle. So that's a problem beyond technology, and it goes across almost all industries that we have in Nigeria. And those are the things that people need to do it afraid and create these industries, right? So that's the key problem. So I'll defer to.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. I was actually going to ask about the startup bill, but I'll go ahead and bring Tosi on board now. Hi, Tosi. So Tosi is the CEO of Endeavor. Okay. She's passionate about supporting entrepreneurs and helping them scale, not just for the immediate impact this has on the organization, but more for a multiplier effect this confers on larger society and the economy. So Tosi, I really wanted you on this panel because I think you have a balanced view. You've worked in government when you were working as the head of innovation with the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund, and now you're in the private sector, but on a global scale. Endeavor is part of Endeavor Global. So you also work with entrepreneurs, and you can tell from an entrepreneur's perspective. So the first question, let's talk about the startup bill. As someone who's worked with both the public sector and also now private sector, are there any key elements that the government and the tech ecosystem should consider in the startup bill that will foster innovation and compare this to global best practices?
Awesome. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Omi. Awesome. Thank you, Omi. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here. Hello, Oswald. Good evening, Mr. Jayola. It's a pleasure to share this panel with you. Omi, thank you for that question. And there are a few recommendations that I can think about. And the good thing is with the startup bill, it's not just government working on it, as Oswald can testify to. So it's government and people from the private sector as well as also people from the tech ecosystem. And going back to what you said about clusters. So one of the challenges that we have here, or a few challenges that we have, there are a couple. So the first is infrastructure. As you know, infrastructure is expensive and very poor in Nigeria. So things like electricity, for instance, power is not consistent. Broadband is expensive, little or no security. And so an entrepreneur that is just starting or has an idea that they want to start, thinking about this infrastructure can discourage them because they can't afford the infrastructure. The second is talent. So if you think about talent, you can think about talent in two ways. So the first is people who are interested in tech skills but cannot afford it. So you're interested in data science, for instance, but you can't afford the training. So what happens to you? Or you want to hire somebody, you want to hire a data scientist or anyone else in tech, but you can't seem to find it, the right person, because you hire one person today, they get poached tomorrow, or you hire them today and 2 weeks after they tell you that they're moving to Canada. So there's a shortage there. There's also a challenge around access to market. So as you know, we have all these different problems or challenges. I see them as opportunities. And what our entrepreneurs are doing are taking these challenges and turning them to opportunities, looking for ways for their products to drive inclusivity, looking for ways to deliver services to be better, cheaper, and faster. But one thing that comes up is access to market. So if I'm an entrepreneur, for instance, and I'm just starting out, if I don't have access to large corporates that can possibly adopt my product or solution or service, or can test it for me, for instance, or even access to government that can serve as, the first testers of this project or this product, I will struggle. And so you find that entrepreneurs who have access to market, so access to people. So let me give you a good example. If you used to work in a bank, for instance, and you have access to the EDs of the bank or the CEO, it's easier for you to have a conversation than someone who didn't work in a bank in Nigeria and does not have that access. So one thing the startup bill can do, in addition to clusters, providing shared services, providing a shared economy and infrastructure, in addition to paying for talent and also training people, it could be through a student loan program. We piloted this at LSETF. You could also create some sort of incentive around access to market. It could be a partnership or some sort of incentive for large corporates, for instance, that if you're able to test or adopt these products or services from entrepreneurs, you get X incentive. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it would look like. It could be tax or not. I wouldn't get into that. Or even putting a coming up with a set aside from government. The SBA in America, they do this very well, where they have a set aside saying small businesses, this contract is for small businesses, or if we ever have a project, we would ensure that small businesses get X% of whatever the contract is. And so this way you're going to incentivize and also encourage entrepreneurs to do it afraid, like we're saying, to take that leap and test out this idea that they have. I'll stop here. Hoping you guys can still
yes,
hear me.
we can hear you. So I have one more question. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Tosin. So as we continue to grow, as our tech ecosystem continues to grow, government support and regulation is crucial. However, from a private sector perspective, they often see the regulatory environment as though they are trying to stifle growth as opposed to supporting growth. So it may just be a function of lack of communication. I don't know. Well, we have seen this in the case of things like disruptions in the ride-hailing startups, the ban on crypto and all of that. So there needs to be a balancing act for policymakers in keeping up with the fast pace of the technology disruption and deciding on how to also regulate startups. Now you've been in both, the government side and also private sector. How can government achieve this seamlessly by creating venture-friendly legal and regulatory environments? And how can startups collaborate with regulators to build trust and assist with any knowledge gaps? How can startups also help government to see the benefits of this innovation to the economy as a whole? I know the startup bill is part of this, but how else?
So I think definitely there has to be more engagement. Before I started working at LSETF, I used to be one of those people that would say, I can't see myself working for the public sector. It can never happen. But I'm glad I did. Because it definitely changed my perspective. There are a few good people out there that want to help entrepreneurs and want to help small businesses. There are also so many people who look like us now. So young people, like Oswald, for instance. I know you keep calling him Mr., but yeah,
he says
Oswald. Like Oswald, for instance. There are young commissioners today. There are young SSAs and young SAs and people who can engage with us. So I definitely think more engagement. I think we need to both build trust, where young people don't see the government as someone who wants to stifle their growth or The government also doesn't see young people as, forgive my language, just people who are lazy or looking for an easy way out. At the end of the day, I think the outcome we're all looking for is scale, wealth creation, and job creation. And the truth is, technology is what is going to get us there. Digitization is what is going to get us there. Government cannot create jobs on their own. It's never happened before. Government's job is to create an enabling environment for small businesses and startups and micro businesses to thrive. They're the ones who will create the jobs. And the moment government understands that, which I think they do to some extent, then it then becomes, how can we work together? It then becomes, how do I give you this environment that you need and just let you be, so that you can work on whatever it is that you're working on and we can both benefit. Look, if Nigeria wins, Africa wins. We say this all the time. Nigeria has to win. And so I think it's more engagement, but I think it's also getting involved. Having young people that look like us getting involved and playing our part and bringing everyone together. You trust your own. You might not trust, I don't want to say older people, but you trust your own.
Yes, thank God. I'm one of the young people here.
Me too.
I turned 40 this year.
You're with us, so you're young as well.
I'm young, Abby. I just meet,
you owe me. I'm saying Mr. Jayola.
Oh, Mr. Jayola is young as well. Yes.
We trust NESG.
Yes, sir. I'm the borderline of millennials. And if it was 1 year after, I'd have gone to the next generation.
Not borderline of millennials. But I'm young. Let me add to what she just said. And I think what I gained personally from that was that I get the feeling that everybody should join government at some point in time.
At some point.
I would say this, right? I found myself asking this question: who exactly is government?
Us.
Right? Who exactly is government? We find people saying government did this, and what's funny about that is, before I decided to, as I now say, volunteer for government, I ran a business in Lagos, right? So the minute I go over this imaginary line, I'm now the boogeyman, right? So I would like to say those are tools of the devil, right? That thought in itself is what deprives us from participating in governance, right? Is what makes us not understand that we are the government. Right? And I don't say that in a protest type of way, but once you start understanding that you're the government, your moves become different. The way you approach government becomes different. Now, so one of the things I also realized in my stay so far is that I started off the Nigerian Startup Bill saying the ecosystem, and then I would say government. And at some point I realized that was wrong, right? Because the ecosystem is actually made up of government and the practitioners, as I now refer them to them as, right? You have the practitioners and the regulators making the ecosystem, right? So when you look at some of the issues that we like to state as issues in regulation, sadly to say, some of these regulations always existed. They were always there, but like was just stated just now, the lack of engagement. Because regulation always follows innovation, right? Sometimes it's right behind or is up the road, but it's always going to come behind it, right? So there has to be a sense of how do we manage the regulation to make this new value that I'm trying to create make sense. There's also a sense of, that's also lacking, is what is the understanding of the impact of the value you're creating, right? So a lot of times when you create something, you say you're disrupting, right? Fantastic. But when you disrupt, what is damaged? In an economy like Nigeria, where we're already on one leg, right? So there needs to be a better understanding of what is the disruption, what is the impact of the disruption. So I'll give you one example. I looked at remittances in dollars. And these numbers may have moved far from now, so I'm probably wrong now, but I'll give you, this example is at the time that I looked at it. Remittances in dollars was about 30 million. That was less than normal, right? So we had lost $30 in USD remittances. But the crypto numbers that was public was also $30 million for right? Now, in this economy where dollars not coming in is a problem, what do you expect the regulator to do? If you're the regulator, what will you do? We are a consuming economy. We just eat. Nigerians, we're just eating. Right? That's not me saying we're tired, though. We're not. We're very creative, energetic, powerful people. God's own creation. That's not the point. But the way our economy works, we're more on the consuming side. So that's why our dollar is always moving. I'm not an economist, but these are the issues. So when you look at something, I mean, this wasn't a government find. This was just me reading randomly, and I looked at crypto numbers, I looked at remittances drop numbers. It was about the same, right? So we need to have an understanding of what's being lost in our disruption. Not to say we shouldn't disrupt, though, please. In fact, I'm working on the bill that helps propel that and helps it scale up, because that's the future of Africa, right? We have the human resources for it. We have very intelligent people for it. They may need some more tooling to get them there, but we're ready to take over. That's the crust of the Nigerian startup bill. But I think when it comes to regulation and government and the practitioners, there needs to be a better understanding. The current position is them versus us, as opposed to let me go in there and educate them on what I'm trying to do, right? Let me partner with them and say, oh, I'm the new way of lending money. You do it the old way. Let me show you what's the value add in how I'm going to do it and how I'm going to increase the economy. It may not happen right now, because sometimes it's patience, right? So I do it now, but over a scale, it would improve XYZ. Although you lose it today, you'll gain it in 5 years. Mm-hmm. Okay, then maybe we should be patient with you. That conversation is not happening.
So I totally agree. I think two things. First of all, maybe changing the term disruption to transformation may actually make it easier to accept. And secondly, I know one of the things they do in Israel is a lot of stakeholder engagement. So sometimes, for instance, when there was an issue with, I think, one of the wars, they'll bring Benjamin Netanyahu to a public forum, and everybody will discuss. And one of the things that I love about their culture is they don't, even though I say sir, I just, they don't. Everybody's on nickname, first name basis. Even your superiors in the military, even your president, everyone has a nickname, and so everyone is able to engage. So that way, that can help with the engagement.
There's a value there.
Okay, so let's go to Mr. Lai Jayola. Not the least, the last but not the least. I have so many questions for you, Oswald. I still have some more, but let's go. So, hello, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Yes, sir. So, Mr. Jayola is the CEO of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. He serves on various committees, including the Nigerian Vision 2020 Committee, part of the Central Work Medium-Term National Development Plan 2021-2025, and the Nigeria Agenda 2050. So I'd like to first of all congratulate you, sir, on the recent Nigerian Economic Summit event held in October. I joined virtually, and I was inspired by all the conversations on the need to, as well as the discussions on debt financing. Okay, so I'm coming with my suggestion question. So yeah. Sorry, can I have another mic? Or is it? Thank you, sir. Thank you, Oswald. Is the Nigerian in me? You're part of major committees such as the Nigerian Vision 2020 and the Nigeria Agenda 2025, the Medium-Term Development Plan. I looked at the policy priorities for the Medium-Term National Development Plan, and I also looked at the outline of the draft plan and sector strategy, particularly the digital economy, bioeconomy, science, tech, and innovation, and it was quite extensive. So I commend everyone that's part of that. However, I'd like to suggest a different approach. 2 decades ago, India had a national agenda that they were going to be known for innovation, technology, and creativity. In order to achieve this, they ensured that the educational sector was modified for the future that they envisioned. It was deliberate, and everything was crafted towards that vision. Sir, I believe that we should also follow suit and create a national plan and agenda for innovation as the main topic. With our 200 million people projected to be 400 million soon, Nigeria could be positioned to be the human resource capital of the world. This way we can export our digital talent. The medium-term National Development Plan and even the Nigeria Agenda 2050 could focus on this whilst we still develop the other sectors, because we still have to develop our national resources like our cotton and all the other sectors. We still need to do that, but those could be more from a long-term perspective. If we focus on innovation for medium-term, short-term, it can enable us to quickly leapfrog. It would enable us to earn revenues that we can use to even help all the other sectors, even infrastructure. Sir, is this something we should consider?
Thank you very much, Omi, and thank you for having me. I mean, it's something that we always considered, and it was part of the plan. But when you were talking about India, you were talking about India 20-year plan. I know by the time they look at Vision 2050, all of those things will be appropriately captured. In fact, what drove Vision 2050 was the fact that Nigeria was going to be the third most populous nation in the world. And with a population of 400 million thereabout, we then need to be able to know exactly what we want to do. But let me backtrack. Each time we talk about innovation, there is always the thinking that it's all about techie, right? Let's get it right. Now, if I focus only on, and look, don't get me wrong, I am pro-techie. I have many of them around me, and I know that we need all of those things. We need that to be able to leapfrog and do the many things we need around that. And I'm glad that when you looked at, it's not official yet, when you look at what was done around digital, part of one of the government did was to have a lot of stakeholders, people that are in that field, that understood how we can use technology, not only as a sector, but an enabler across the board. But I'm going to give you some data, because the bottom line of our discussion is, how do we diversify our economy? And diversification can be done from quite a number of areas. You know, 3 major sectors of our economy, right, that are leading growth, are not employers of labor, right? So you talk about areas like techie and all of those areas, they're not employers of labor. And when you look at Nigeria with the number of people we have in the poverty line, so if you don't solve those problems, there's nothing me and you are going to do in the city around those things that will solve a problem. In fact, one of the reasons we are finding our people, the young people who are doing well in Turkey, going elsewhere is, apart from the fact that the environment is not encouraging, supporting them enough, insecurity is a major factor. So they're going to an area where it's done. So one of the areas I believe technology can do a lot of work is to say, how do I apply to agriculture? At least have light manufacturing. Look, agriculture alone accounts for 40 million people. Minimum, that's the last data. You have people that are employed. I'm not sure those that are employed. Those that are employed, 40 million of them are in agriculture. All of them are they are at subsistence level. If anytime they say agri accounts for 2% of Nigerian economy, don't get carried away. 90% of what you have in agri is crop production. Not only is it that we don't even get best yield for our people, we only then subject ourselves to vagaries of prices. So one of the things I want to see is that how can we leverage on technology, first to ensure that people have better yield for the acreage of land they cover. Secondly, how do we ensure that we reduce post-harvest losses? About 50-60% of what those farmers do get to waste. And I've had people talk about value chain here today. How do you do end-to-end value chain? Rather than we exporting raw, how do we begin to then process? You know, so those are the things. You can imagine a farmer who today is using seeds that are not right. In fact, if you know, in those days, we need to compare Nigeria with other places that are outside Africa. But one of the things we do now is to even show the things that Africans are doing. Our yield per acre for most of our product is very, very low. One state that have demonstrated that they can do better is Kaduna State. If you see what they've done in terms of going to Alliance for Green Revolution for Africa alone and learning how they can improve their yield, you see that. And so when you improve the yield of the farmer, the first thing you do is that you're able to lift that person out of poverty. Look, I'm looking for youth not only in Turkey. I want to see a farmer. I mean, long time ago, the president of ADB talked about the face of the Nigerian farmer, who uses his phone, who knows his prices, who knows the best time to produce. So all of these things are things we consider. So I'm not going to limit technology, innovation to only ICT or phones, whatever. But to say, how do we innovate across those value chains? Now, if you do this appropriately, we won't have most of the problems we have today. If you take Nigeria imports, two things account for close to about 60% of 70% of our import. And what are these? Crude oil, fuel and food. But if we pay attention and use innovation to enhance agriculture, what we do, not only will we lift people out of poverty, we become food sufficient. And those numbers we talk about, Nigeria, we have population. Look, in economics, we don't look at your population. We look at how the disposable income in the hands of your population. If you have 90 million people who are living below poverty line, can they buy? So I'm in support of all we're talking about innovation, but let's look at it from a very broad angle. I like what the tech people, what the COVID has enabled us to do, how we have applied tech to health sector. How can we use that to grow what we do around health? How can we use that to grow in what we do in education? For instance, I agree with you that, look, the current curriculum we run, whether in primary school, university and co, is outdated, it's irrelevant. So we are in constant engagement with them to see how can we change this. One of the things we will tell the university system is been that, look, don't do a curriculum without taking into consideration the users of this, your output. So there must be dialogue. And I agree with you, within dialogue, but sometimes if you want to dialogue with government, you need to have a very, very patient spirit so that you are there and you don't lose up. But Nigeria is our own nation, is all we can work, what we all need to do. And so I commend the work that you're doing. And then let me again, it's not about regulation alone. No. I like what is being done around startup bill, and then the NESG through the NASBA is part of what work is being done. But there are many laws in Nigeria that we don't implement. A couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, we did a lot of work around Kama. You know what we did in Kama? The reason we did this work around Company Life Matter is to be able to move the informal sector into the formal sector. But we haven't seen that needle yet. So implementation is another thing that we need to bear in mind. And I like the question you talk about regulator. Sometimes government want to know that regulators, yes, they are to regulate, but they must be business enablers too. But more often than not, want to get income from them, want them to make them enablers of business, and there's a conflict. So we need this dialogue from time to time to change things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I was going to, Tosi has raised up her hand, but I wanted to say something first. Thank you, sir. I was almost saying that, are you looking at my notes? Or did I send you the questions? Because I was actually going to talk about the education system being outdated. But I wanted to just say that the reason why we are focusing on technology here is because, and I said this when I started off, because we want to use technology to transform all the sectors. So it's not focusing on it, and I said not as technology as a sector, but as a common denominator. In 2016, actually, we had a Do It Afraid Agribusiness Entrepreneurship Workshop where we focused on we tried to showcase all the opportunities across the value chain, which is where we found out that we were importing $500 million worth of tomato paste when we have put tomatoes that die or are wasted post-harvest. And even from that conference, we had people that started up different businesses in agriculture. We had one, an agri-tech, big business. So the whole point of these discussions is if we can get more people to look at how we can use technology to transform education, to transform agriculture, to transform healthcare, that way then we actually are transforming all the other sectors at the same time. So thank you, sir. I have another question, but let Tosin ask her question.
Thank you, Omi. So mine is not really a question, but more of a comment, and just to steer the conversation
Go ahead.
in a different way. And, thank you for bringing other sectors, Mr. Jayola. And, as you were talking, I was thinking about healthcare and agriculture. Take healthcare, for instance. It would be really nice to digitize the hospitals that we have in Nigeria. But the truth is, it's the last thing on their mind. They don't have infrastructure. So for instance, power is inconsistent. Maybe doctors are not being paid well. Nurses are not being paid well. They are barely even getting all their revenue. And so digitization is the last thing on their mind. Now, if you have a healthcare startup that has built a product or solution around digitizing businesses, sometimes it's, the product is there, but who is going to use it? Because the people that you want to give it to cannot even afford the basic things yet. And so you then have to think about, perhaps I should now offer a lending product so that they can now take out a loan to be able to even digitize their hospital. That's one. The second is agriculture, which is really dear to my heart, because at the end of the day, you're correct. It's something that we need to think about. But the truth is, can the farmers pay, because at the end of the day, B2B businesses are more successful, or even more, what's the word now? They are more commercially viable than B2C businesses. Now, can the farmers pay for this product or service? Like, how do we make it easier for the entrepreneur? Because the truth is, you can have all these solutions, but if the end user is not using it or cannot afford it, then we're back right where we started. And we then just tend to focus on fintech, for instance. Because with fintech, if you build a payment infrastructure, then you have the thousands of merchants on Instagram, for instance, that don't have websites, but can easily come up with sign on to the gateway, have a link, send to their customers, and then their customers can then pay. That's easier. But then with other sectors, how do we get people to be able to afford it, is my question, when there's so many other basic problems that exist.
Thank you, Tosin. So I think that's to Mr. Jayola, right?
And I can
answer maybe
Oswald too. I can answer it easily.
Okay, sir, go ahead. I love
Do
this.
I go ahead? Look, you see, sometimes I tell people who design projects and programs and products, and I say, look, you must understand the ecosystem itself. Take health, for instance. Supply could be a problem, but demand for health is a major problem in Nigeria. We set up the health. That's why I'm looking forward to the committee being chaired by the vice president on how we can revamp the entire health sector. Now, because the so-called National Health Insurance Scheme, it's failing. A doctor should not worry if he's treating a patient if he's assured that his money will pay it. We've centralized it so much so that we're not doing well. So the fact is that, and if you look at a lot of out-of-pocket expenses that people pay on health, and the money outside there that people want to leverage on what we do in Nigeria to make sure we have a robust health system. So we need to solve that demand problem. The IFC and the World Bank have done a lot of work around this area. That is, unless we deal with the demand side, so that supplier, that hospital that supplies those services that you want to have, will only engage you if we ensure that there are people that will demand for a service, and those who are demanding for the service can pay. We can apply the same thing to the farmer. A farmer who today is operating at subsistence level will not pay for those things. But if you help the farmer to ensure that her yield per acre is good, and the farm practices are so good, and they can have good quantity, and she doesn't lose all that she produces to post-harvest health losses. And there is an off-taker who can buy this off her at a defined price. I'm using her because a lot of our women are in farming. There are more women in farming than men. And these are people that, if we deal with the value chain, it will help a great deal. So it's then that the farmer can pay you. Who told you that a farmer does not want to have an enhanced service? And I'm glad again that through the work of the ADB, Nigerian government is looking at about 12 agro center areas, and hoping that all of these things will be put together. But unless you increase the disposable income of the farmer, those services is not going to be, you're not going to pay for it. Unless you, so those are the key issues. Anyway, let me stop at that.
That's why we need to focus on technology. Do you want to say something, or I can go to my other question too, Mr. Jay?
No, I'm fine.
You're
Thank
good.
you, Mr. Jayola.
I think Oswald wanted to say something.
I think I'll just add from the Nigerian startup bill perspective. We define startups as tech enabled, and that was done specifically to be able to accommodate health tech, edutech, agri-tech, as opposed to some of the things you would think as psychologically we all think startups, we're thinking a particular type of business. So the bill covers companies that are developing solutions using technology. So that's sort of covered. And I think a lot of the agro-tech companies I know today are not necessarily looking to sell to farmers. They're also looking to aggregate from farmers. So their solution has been around more either pooling investors together and then aggregating the produce for sale. So that's a lot of the business models I've seen around agri-tech.
So in terms of in the startup bill, you were supposed to, I think the committee is supposed to was supposed to present it to the president in October. How much progress do we have? When are we likely to see it passed?
So, bill is one of the fastest, and also in terms of engagement is very balanced between having private sector and government participate in the process. Now, planning for the bill started, I would say, late last year and into early this year, and the actual activities for the bill development started somewhere in the middle of the year. As we sit today, the bill has been approved by Justice. Okay. So I guess I could educate, these are some of the things, but to educate the audience on the process of a bill. Mm-hmm. So a bill could either be started as an executive bill or a private member bill, which means somebody in the National Assembly, maybe from private sector, is developing a bill for a particular reason. Or can be done as an executive bill to address an area that the presidency feels needs to be addressed, so he creates an executive bill. Now, the Nigerian Startup Bill is an executive bill. It was primarily based, the root of it were statements that Mr. President himself made in his speech in January 1st, where he actually said our youths are creative, energetic, and achievers, and we ultimately need to do something with the legislature. Yes, the speech does exist, right? So I said it on purpose because
let him talk.
No, it's good. It's good. This is engagement.
Engage.
No, this is the engagement, right? So I said it on purpose because, like I said in the beginning, the speech, no, it wouldn't go viral. Do you know why? Do you know why it wouldn't go viral? Because it's good news.
Actually, let's not let him land.
Yeah.
The audience will ask.
That's the problem, because it's good news, right? So when we actually launched the startup bill, we've entered this quarter. I will just say a bit of it. When we started the startup bill, that statement was restated, as in Mr. President said, Nigerian youths are. I know what everybody's thinking in here, because you all remember a particular statement that was made. Nigerians, that statement was made 5 years ago. And we no longer remember the context in which it was made. Right? Right? Nobody here can tell me the context in which it was made. But what we got out of it was Nigerian, I'm not going to repeat it. Right? Yeah. But however, the same man who is your president has now said that Nigerian youths are intelligent, creative, are achievers, and we should support them with a legislature that will help them succeed. We should believe it.
So this is why I would say I think people need to also do it afraid and get into media, because media also needs
Yes.
bad news sells fast.
Yeah.
I'm not in government, so I'm not here to back anybody up, but I'm just talking about the truth. Bad news moves fast, but good news doesn't move fast. So I understand the whole process of the startup bill, but I never knew that that statement was made.
So, January 1 speech, that statement was made. And off of that statement, it's quite possible we're going to get not just the Nigerian startup bill, we're more than likely going to get a number of bills that will help different industries. As I speak, they're starting a creative industry bill that is going to do the exact same thing the Nigerian startup bill intends to do. And that's just based on one speech, right? So it is possible, right? Do it afraid, get more people in government, and some of these things that we believe are the desires of God for Nigeria can happen, right? It does not happen when we hold on to something from 5 years ago and not believe something that is being said now, right? Trust me, I'm experiencing this in real time. I run a business in Lagos. I have 50, 60 staff. We've been doing business for years. We build into infrastructure. Nobody can ever accuse me as a government person. Just like she said, I never thought I'd be in government. But I find myself here, right? And so back to the process. So you now go into the process of developing the bill, which means you write it, right? That process was actually done in partnership. Matter of fact, it's sort of a private sector driven bill. A partnership with the bill and the Ministry of Digital Economy created the content of the bill, but then there was a lot of engagement. A lot of people got engaged. The bill has this approach which we call the big tent approach, ultimately meaning that anybody, I don't know if anybody knows, can picture a tent in their mind, a circus tent, is held up by different pillars, and each person involved is a pillar that holds up this idea of a bill. NESG is involved. NESG even did an event for the bill, a pre-NSG summit event was done for the bill. So we have a lot of people who have the hearts and want Nigerian youth to succeed, that are involved in the process of developing this bill. So now we have a bill that's gone through the Ministry of CDE, has been approved by the Honorable Mr. Pantami, has been approved by the Justice, and is to be released and go to the Federal Executive Council. After approval by the Federal Executive Council, it will go to NAS, which starts a whole new conversation. Now, why Nigerians are important in this process, right? Why is it important that Nigerians understand that you are in government, you are government, right? We're often deluded to think that politicians don't like the citizens, that the citizens don't have an effect on politicians. The lack of engagement of citizens will lead to politicians that do what they want. The active engagement of citizens leads to politicians who operate, not do it afraid, they operate in actual fear, or operate in a mode of partnership with the citizenship, right? Because ultimately, if we as citizens engage, for instance, this example, which is a grand experiment, in the Nigerian startup bill, then what you will find is that how the bill develops and what comes out of the bill in the end will be what actually supports you. But if you're disengaged, then the bill becomes what the bill becomes, right? So if you understand the process of the bill goes into National Assembly, where the document gets opened up, and it can become something else. Because now you have different sides, different people saying what they want, and the bill can change. But when you have a disengaged citizenship, it can become something else. And if you want to think about any problem we've had in any bill or any law that you've ever heard and you just don't feel like it represents you, it's because you did not participate. Right? So I'm not up here preaching though. This is just me sharing my small discovery.
Okay.
Right?
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. Mr. Jayola, so in fact, I'm going to add this. I was just going to lump your questions together. Let me just add something that I picked up from what Oswald said. How can we, so there are plans, there was the Vision 2020, the Nigeria Agenda 2050, now we have the medium term, we have the economic growth plan, there's even the zero oil plan, there are many plans. but many people are not even aware of these plans. They're not even aware of what is in the plans unless, like myself, you go and then read up on them. And even if this is my platform, so I can talk about this, but if I had suggestions, where do I go to? Unless I know somebody that knows somebody, how does my suggestion even, get heard? That's one. Secondly, it's nice to have all this. However, how can we remove politics from the plan so that when another government from another party goes into government, we now don't have a new Nigeria agenda plan, but we have an overall vision and agenda, regardless. So I don't know, maybe I can use the US, well, not really now because of everything that's going on there, but the ideal situation is to have an overriding plan that is the vision for Nigeria, regardless of the political party that you're on, so that there's also continuity. How can we achieve this? Now, my real question is, you talked about 90 million. So we're almost done, guys. We talked about 90 million people that have no disposable income. Many of them are uneducated. You also talked about education. So in terms of education, I remember at the conference last year, the Jewish Separate conference last year, I mentioned that our education system is currently outdated and no longer effective. We need to rethink our education in order to take advantages of the opportunities we have highlighted in our discussions. We can make Nigeria the premier education hub of Africa, the new global schoolhouse, and position Nigeria as a choice location for quality education for a growing African middle class. We should mirror or can mirror Singapore by investing in basic education with emphasis on technical skills relevant to the information digital age. Singapore currently focuses on only English, the mother tongue, maths, and sciences. I said last year my son had just got into year one. Year one, you're just coming from nursery school. The guy is doing geography, social studies, all sorts of things. And we're homeschooling. I was so happy when we went back to school. Because I'm like, how are we supposed to cope? All these things. Because of what Singapore focuses on, just English, the mother tongue, maths, and science, they currently have one of the highest performing results in maths and sciences. And we also know what they're doing in tech. Israel as well, very big on education in tech. Should we rethink our policy of education to focus on these subjects in order for Nigeria to be well positioned for the pervasive digitization of the global economy that is imminent and create a startup nation? Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't consider other people that want to do other things. However, if we have population, a lot of them are undereducated. If we can focus on, it's innate. When the whole Hush Puppy, for those of us that know Hush Puppy, when Hush Puppy went viral, there was a report by Bloomberg that showed how in some pockets in Lagos, there are some young boys that have an ecosystem, a cluster of doing the wrong things with the talent that they have in tech. So there is the talent. Imagine a Hush Puppy with the kind of brain and talent he had. Imagine if he had the right values and he used the talent to enable our tech sector in Nigeria. There are many, many Hush Puppies in Bariga, Shoki, all those areas that the Bloomberg reporter mentioned. If we can educate them, focus on those main topics, then we can see that we can export our digital talent. And let me give you an example of this exporting our digital talent. I looked at the zero oil plan and it was fantastic. I really wish he was actually supposed to be here. I really, really wish he came to talk about it because it was his visionary, Mr. Shegun Awolowo, visionary and audacious. He came up with a zero oil plan in 2015. And at the time, I'm sure it was like, why are we thinking of a zero oil plan? Because then oil prices were still great. And then the 2016 recession happened, oil prices went down, and then even the pandemic. And so eventually, when they say preparation meets opportunity, success is when preparation meets opportunity. He was prepared. So when the opportunity came with the pandemic, his plan has now been implemented. However, when I looked at the plan, I saw that there's policy for one state, one product, and there were 22 products like cotton, timber, so many things we want to export. But again, I did not see our major resource there, how we can export our digital talent. Now, software development is transforming industries, agriculture, all sorts of industries. We currently have in Africa about only 700,000 developers. Nigeria is just 83,000. In Latin America, there are about 2 million developers. In Silicon Valley alone in California, 600,000. So there's a huge opportunity. But with developers, you need it's more of a higher skill, right? Currently, we can immediately start earning revenues by exporting data enablers. One of my panelists talked about this last year. Data enablers, let me explain it the way he explained it. If a computer is meant to identify a cat, before the computer can identify a cat, millions of people would have had to first of all go and put in the data so that the computer can identify the cat. To be able to do that, it doesn't take much. Yeah, data entry. So we can take advantage of data, customer service, data enablers. They can sit here in Africa or Nigeria and begin to export and begin to earn some revenue, which would eventually become tax revenue, all of that. So how can we ensure that our education system is revamped? Should we follow the likes of Singapore and Israel and focus on major subjects? Thank you, and that's my last question for today.
Well, let all of us get engaged.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
We need to get engaged. That's the first thing. Now, which subjects am I going to pick and go? Look, it's when we sit down as stakeholders and we realize the fact that we're different. Sometimes when we look at Nigeria, we look at everything in Nigeria. But by the time you begin to drill down and look at people at various geopolitical area, you then know that the needs of A are different from the needs of B. So I am one person that I always say one cap does not fit all. You need to understand, because I always like evidence-driven policy making. Let's just sit down. Let's look at it. But do I agree with you that those number of subjects we are doing are necessary? 100% I agree with you. They are necessary. I've told a lot of my friends who are lecturers in university and said, all the things you teach those people for 3-4 years to do, 1 year they will do all of those things and master it. You don't need 4 years to do all those things we're teaching them. And that's the truth of the matter. Will you need to get involved in letting people prepare people for the skills of the future? Yes, our universities are not preparing people for the skills of the marketplace. And again, we need to get involved in engaging them. We've commenced the engagement, but one of my mentors told me something. He said, don't think because what you are doing is good, everybody will sign on to it. There are people who are enjoying the bad thing, the rot that are taking place, and they will do all to ensure that those good things don't come up. And therefore, you need to redouble your effort and keep at it and constantly engage, and don't let them call you in. So if you said it once and they didn't hear, say it again and again and again and again. Look, we got to get involved. Right. That's basic thing. And I'll leave it at that. Plans, how do we ensure that government do continuity? Look, even in America, everybody will tell you, you can see the argument between infrastructure bill, Build Back Better and co. Look, the needs of Nigerians remain the same. We want good food, we want good secured environment. They are the same. Parties just come there to tell us this will be our path to achieving it. What is important, which I've told my colleagues and my friends, is that we elites are the problem of Nigeria. We, the elites, are the problem. We are the one that get oil at cheap price. We're the one that get dollar at cheap price. We're the one that use all our electricity at cheap price. The moment we sit down together to say, look, what is it that the typical Nigerian needs and what are we going to focus on? Look, any party and government that come to power, we just follow it and make sure they are doing it. They can come back and change and say, we'll do it this way or this way. And the man is hungry, he needs food. And if you don't give him food, regardless of the party, it doesn't work. A man needs health, he needs it. He needs good roads. And we're talking about internet today. I mean, how many years have we had broadband waiting at our borders and our water shores, and we have not been able to roll out all over Nigeria? Thank God for the minister who divided Nigeria into 6 zones and said different people go and roll out. Even that's how they reduce the cost per rollout. So until we begin to take it to the end and stop just dropping and touching and dropping and we're focused, we're going to see all of those things. So plans, we can change. What Nigeria needs remains the same. And once you begin to make your government accountable, once Nigeria begin to vote for people and then ask them that, look, you have not done what I want you to do, politicians will sit up. I don't know if I answer your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I have like tons of questions. Like I can stay here till tomorrow asking questions because I'm like, this is where I want to be. Ask questions and But we've taken a lot of time. We started late. Then we've taken Tosi, Mr. Jael, and Oswald. I was about to say sir again. It's time. So we have other things to do. We also have our other speakers, so we may have to go. I can take maybe one question from the audience. If one person wants to ask a question or a comment, suggestion, we talked about engaging. If someone has something to say, would be great. Okay, thank you. Can someone please help me? And then we call it a day.
Thank you very much. My name is Enito. And I've listened to Tosi, Mr. Laoye, Oswald, and yourself. And what comes to mind, taking from Oswald's encouragement of government, he says, we are the government. So I think in all of the suggestions that we have put forward, we here, I'm not asking a question, I'm kind of, charging us that we here seated, she's done her work, they've done theirs. Ours is to follow up with the people that we say are in government with accountability. We can put forward suggestions, we can prefer solutions and all that, but the onus is on us, the real government, to follow up on accountability. A lot of times we say, oh, the government is doing this, oh, it's the government's fault, but actually the fault lies with us because we do not follow up with accountability. So let us not rest on our oars. They've proffered solutions, let us hold them accountable. Thank you.
Okay, just one, please.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Ayokomi, and thank you, speakers. I have a question for you as well. Okay, so we hear you. We should engage, and we want to engage, but we are afraid. We want to engage. I want to engage. I want to be in government. So we want you, being that you are there. How do you suggest we engage without endangering our lives? I mean, last year we were engaging. Yeah, we were engaging. We hold these people accountable through the platforms we have. But it appears like our voices are being stifled. Twitter is one way we engage and we hold these people. We call them out, but it's been banned. So you are there. You're encouraging us to engage. Suggest how we can engage without endangering our lives so that we don't keep losing our youth through engagement.
Many of us want to start crying. Yeah, but
So-
this is a question.
I like that question. Oh, in fact, I join you. I love that question. It had passion. It's from the heart, and the youths really want to find a way to engage. So I would say this. I would say with the NSB, right? We've been trying to test out different ways to engage, the citizenship. We've done a rally. When we were planning the rally, I was very nervous. I said, should I go to the rally? No, I may make it worse. We did I think 5 or 6 cities simultaneously. We had over 7,000 people show up across all those cities. Cities like Abuja, Mbonyi, Lagos. I'm forgetting the other 2 now. There was one in the north, Gombe, Kebbi, right? And the idea was to get young people out wearing I think they turned off my mic. So the idea, sorry? Hey, you never know.
Remember, we're all one.
Yeah, sometimes
We're all one.
both sides behave the same. Sometimes. So the idea was to get the youth out with the NSB shirt out to show support for the bill, right? Now, from my virtual people. Now we're done. From my perspective, it was a good way to start something. Something I thought was positive, right? As it relates to the bill. Here are Nigerians, they're supporting the bill, and they came out to support the bill. Going back to my statement about politicians, they, by nature, they look at the humans they cover, lack of better words. And ultimately, if we start to show positive. Okay, let me go back to this. I think I'm trying to dodge what I was going to say. I was afraid to do this 5-city thing. In my mind, I was like, how can this go wrong? So I gave a talk before they all went out, all the leads, and I found myself sounding like a preacher, saying things like, we're out there evangelizing. Right? We're not protesting, we're evangelizing. We're going out to tell people what this bill is supposed to do. So that was a bit of a scary moment because everything else had been positive about the bill, but this was a risk in my mind, massive risk. And I even considered canceling it because I was like, this almost doesn't add any value, and it's bad if it goes wrong, right? Because think about it, it's not controlled. The invite list, you didn't invite particular people. It's not like you invite church-going people. You just show up based on the flyer, and you have 7,000 people show up. Now, would you agree with me that those 7,000 people showing up had sort of a political back to it, right? There was sort of a beyond this, there's an idea that we have to show that we can gather positively. By the way, I forgot to mention, I think because good news doesn't spread or we don't read the papers, this happened the same week as the celebration of the toll gate. So that's what made it extra risky, right? But I don't know if it's just me or I wanted to prove a point that the youth can gather and it can be very positive, right? Now, being the time is spent, I'll jump right to where this really should go. If we gather, and may their souls rest in peace. Let's leave it at that. It's not an argument of what happened. I'm going beyond my remit as a government person right now, actually. If we believe that engaging through a rally is a good thing, we should also believe that voting is a good thing, right? This is another way of participating, right? we should also believe that there are other forms of protest or rallying that can be used to show that this particular item is important. Now, if you look at the elections that happened in Lagos, local government elections, I don't know if there are any Lagosians here, and you look at the people who came out, I don't know if you want to define that as fear, but the youth didn't show up to vote, right? And there were youths running. The youth party had, I think I met maybe two of them, youth party had very strong candidates, right? But they weren't supported. So that energy has to go somewhere, right? It's in physics. If you take energy, if you gather, like, do it afraid is gathering all of you in here, and if you don't let that energy dissipate, you have to take that energy and use it for something, right? Otherwise, it goes wrong. And even, I mean, there's even theories on how long you can gather people for before it goes wrong. It's all science. It's known. Social science. You cannot gather people in a place for so long before it goes wrong. It's almost bound to happen. So this is not me making excuses, but what I'm really saying is that there are different ways to, let's say this. When I say I volunteer for government, how come you don't see that as a form of protest? Google me, I'm very comfortable. I don't need government job. Granted, my access in life got me a cushy job in the presidency. I am not by any chance saying that was not a fact. But trust me, it's volunteerism. So how is that not an act of protest or act of making a step toward the right direction? So it's a case where everybody has to find what is theirs. What is that thing you can do? Is it that you gather 10 of your people and you start teaching in a primary school? Guess what? That's your act of adding value to your country. That's what we don't do. Nigerians were so individual. There's just 200 million individuals in one space. That's the problem. So even the government people, they're individuals. It's not a system of government. It's a system of a government of individuals. So how do you change that, right? So it is very possible, not very possible. It should have been that after what happened, and when I say what happened, I'm speaking to the protest of Lekki, that the very next election that happened after that, you would have seen a shift. That is the true failure.
Thank you. We have, sorry, Matt. Thank you. Because we have some other, we have, no, we have, you didn't at all.
I said hashtag answers how. And you just gave me the answer. I'm so glad for being here today. Hashtag startup now. Now startup how? You are saying, what is your engagement? It's a mindset. I'm a mother of sons. I was busy doing stuff in Abuja. I didn't know that the very first video that went viral came out of a son literally from my womb. I thought the guys were in the house just doing creative work. When my son called me and said, Mom, we have to tell you something. You know that video that went out? It stole me. I got out of the car. I told the driver, just reverse. What did you say? Who? All of you gathered. My God, the intelligence community is here already. I said, you don't understand. And that is what pushed me there. What I want to say is simply this. Omi, you said you're not in government. You are. This is government. You've just come to the center. You've put this conversation on the table. This is government. I want you all to understand it's a civic assignment. The startup went out also, well, thank you very much. But when you want to confront Goliath, you don't go elsewhere but where Goliath is. You needed to have gone back to the bridge. We need to take the conversation to the link bridge. And understand this. You do it afraid, but you do it with the culture of respect that we have in this country. There is an engagement when you put the culture of respect on the table. And when you do that, you will get the engagement you are looking for. There's a Trojan horse model that demands every one of us must come in. You were saying, how do we put out the politics? How do we remove politics from the plan? There's no way you're going to do that. That is contrary to you getting your plan as the rising star established in its orbit and with its realm. You have to get in there. You must put your own people there on every party platform. The reason why your great representations on the youth party, strong as they were, didn't get voted for. They were in a weak party. You need to go in there. It's ugly. Yes.
Go in afraid and go in there.
Politics is not dirty. They are just dirty people in politics. There are dirty people in politics. And you just need to go and do what you've got to do. You will get dirty, but go get yourself cleaned up.
Thank you very much.
So I want to challenge you, Omi. You are in government. And this is not about God talk. Please, when I'm there, don't call me Pastor D. Don't call me Pastor Die or nothing. If who I am will not represent at what will bring to the nation the God of creation, then church is fake and flaky.
Thank you.
We need to take this conversation somewhere else.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad it has happened. And I want to challenge you. Rise up and walk. And if you can't, be Mephibosheth at the table. Go lame, but go.
Woo! Okay, now. Thank you. That is just. I'm glad. It was a very. You did it afraid by asking that question. It was very do it afraid. So thank you for doing that, because we had to have the conversation, But I'm glad you were emotional, but I'm glad you also did it with decorum. Yeah. Thank you for answering, because I wanted to start praying in tongues for you. That Lord, help him answer this question. You could have easily said you didn't want to, but you did it afraid and you answered the question. Thank you. And thank you so much, because when we have different generations here, right? We have different generations, and so it's great to hear from another generation. Because I'm just like, Lord, take control of this, but I don't want us to have a rally. We have a focus. But I'm so glad that you spoke from your generation. You said it, we can engage, but let's also engage with respect. But we must engage. And this is what engaging is, like what you've done now and what you have done. So coming together. And we must also remember, like she said, we are government. What if tomorrow Esther is called into government? Or I'm called into government? Or Ini is coming to, or Miss, you said I shouldn't call you Pastor Dio. Auntie Dio is called into government. It'll be scary. Because all of a sudden, some people that are your friends or allies will begin to obviously put you on the other side. So going into government, that's why also I'm very, very careful when we have conversations, because I know it's also, because I know people that are in government, like Professor Jumoke Oduwole, who is a believer, who is doing things the right way. And so we have to be careful how we channel our emotions, because people are there and doing the work. They're just not seen. Good news doesn't spread. Bad news spreads. So at the end of this panel, I want to thank all my panelists for making this very engaging, for making it, we need to continue to have this kind of forums and discussions, and I hope we continue to have this. Thank you, Mr. Laoye Jayola. Very short notice, but you said yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. We must continue this conversation. Totally shortest notice, but you said yes. I love you. Thank you. Bring me, I don't eat chocolates again so you can bring me granola from New York when you're coming back. Thank you.
Definitely.
And Oswald,
thank you.
there's no way you could have done this virtually, because you needed to be here. So thank you for being here. Thank you for answering with short notice, because I know Simi put you on the spot. So thank you. We have a plaque for you. For our virtual audiences, virtual speakers will send it to you. So we have a plaque which says, take it. So please bring it, just to say thank you for doing it afraid and speaking at this conference. Thank you. So this is a non-profit initiative funded by everybody here, crowdfunding. So manage our gifts. One day, maybe the Lord will allow His sponsor to sponsor us. Thank you. But God is our sponsor. Thank you so much. So I want us to quickly do a virtual picture. So, Oswald, can you? Okay. Take with the panelists. So I'll stand here and Oswald will stand.